And it's I try to imagine being able to see for the first time in your life. The first time we usually see in our lives, we were too young to remember that memory. But can you imagine being an older man or being an older lady, and for the first time in your life, always in darkness, and now you see. You open your eyes and now you can see the reds and the greens of the land, and you can see the blues and the purples of the sky. You see the luminescence of the sun, and at night the luminescence of the moon. If you ever think about it, try to explain certain things to a blind person. Even more so, try to listen to a television program that has visual captioning and how they describe things to people trying to watch TV who are blind. It's never quite the same until you can really see. Same thing in our spiritual sight. Until we can truly see spiritually, we never see things quite right. And as we read in John chapter 9, in verse 11, the man says to the Jews who are asking, because the Jews start to see this man and they say, wasn't this guy blind and now he's walking around seeing? And he says in John chapter 11, he answered, the man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and told me, go to Siloam and wash. So when I went and washed, I received my sight. This man had spiritual sight. He knew from the words of Jesus that if he had obedience, if he trusted in Jesus, something was going to happen. A lot of times there's a lot of individuals where Jesus talks to them, and due to lack of faith, they refuse to do what Jesus has asked them to do, and they miss out on their blessing. Can you imagine this story if this man said, I refuse to wash my eyes? I refuse to believe. I'd rather take pride in my own doings and continue to live the rest of my days blind rather than trust in you and see. And the man and the people were still upset because now, at first, they were yelling at Jesus for saying that he was God, that he is divine, and now he has healed someone. And now the Jewish leaders become even more upset. They become so angry and trying to find a way to persecute Jesus and prove that he was not of God, that they go to the men's parents. And they ask the parents, was this man born blind? And the parents answered, yes. We always knew him to be blind. But here is if you read in that verse, if you continue into verse 21, let's read it together. But we do not know how he now sees, and we do not know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age, he will speak for himself. And in verse 22, it says, his parents said these things because they were afraid of the Jews, since the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him as Messiah, he would be banned from the synagogue. So now the parents have seen the miracle. They always ability to see, for they knew that their son was born blind, yet they were spiritually blind. They refused to say that this man was the Messiah. The man who had the ability to give their son sight surely was of God, and yet they were afraid. They did not want to confess that this man was the Messiah because they were afraid of earthly punishments. How sad it is when we see the power of God working in other people's lives and we downplay it. We refuse to give God the glory. We continue to live our lives spiritually blind. And then as we continue to read, we come to our lecture. For they kept battling after the parents said, we don't know. We're not going to confess that this man is Christ. Go ask him. Go ask our son. He's of age. He can speak. And they badgered him. They continued to badger him to try to make him confess that this man was not of God. This man was not the Son of Man. That this man was not the Christ. And in verse 28, they use the word, they ridiculed him. You're that man's disciple, but we're Moses' disciples. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but this man, we don't know where he comes from. But he turns to them and he says, this is an amazing thing. The man told them, you don't know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. Right here, he is saying, I was born blind, and yet I have the ability to see before you guys did. Since birth, you were able to see rainbows and sunsets and sunrises, yet you have lived your entire life blind. Because you say you're a Pharisee, you say you're educated, then let me educate you. How can this be? How can I be healed? And if you continue to read on, he even says, don't you know, according to theology, if you are a sinner, God does not live in you, there is no power in you, and you can do nothing. So if Jesus was a sinner, how am I able to see right now? This man has to be of God. Because the only source where I can be healed in such a manner, the only way that I can be healed and be able to see is not from some eye surgeon down the street, not some perfect ophthalmologist with 20 years of experience. The only way that I can see now is from God. So, you Pharisees who say you know the scriptures, you have read for no reason. You have read and have been continually spiritually blind. You missed the purpose. You missed the blessing because you refused to open your eyes. And if you read in John chapter 3, before verse 16, which we all know so well, Jesus telling Nicodemus that there was a time when the Israelites were plagued by snake bites. And these were very poisonous snake bites. And whoever was bitten by this snake bite would surely die. But God told Moses and Aaron to take one of those snakes, put it on a staff, and raise it up. And then God told them to tell the Israelites that if anyone is bitten by such a snake, all they have to do is look at that snake on the cross. Now, many of them being puffed up and theologians said, but God said, do not worship any graven